There's a version of trust that doesn't feel like trust. It feels like relief. Like finally, someone is paying attention. Like you don't have to hold everything alone anymore. I know that feeling well because I lived inside it for almost 4 months before I understood what it actually was. My name is Walter. I'm 67 years old, and I live in a house I built with my own hands. Not literally, but close enough. I swung the hammer on the deck out back. I laid the tile in the kitchen myself over a long weekend in 2003 when my wife kept saying we couldn't afford a contractor. She was right about the money and wrong about the result. The tile came out fine. 31 years as a structural engineer will do that for you. You learn how things hold together. You learn where the load goes. You learn which joints fail first under pressure. My wife's name was Cecilia. She died 19 months ago. Pancreatic cancer. 6 weeks from the first symptom to the last morning. I don't talk about it much, but I want you to know it so you understand who I was when all of this started. A man who had just lost the person who kept him from taking the world too seriously. A man who was, whether he admitted it or not, a little more open to help than he'd ever been in his life. My son is 38. I'll call him my son because that's what he is and what he'll always be, whatever else has happened since. He married young. His wife, my daughter-in-law, came into the family 9 years ago, and I want to be honest with you about something. I liked her. I genuinely liked her. She laughed at her own jokes before she finished telling them. She knew every word to songs I'd forgotten I remembered. She brought me sweet potato pie the first Thanksgiving she spent at our house, and watched me eat 2 pieces before she admitted she'd bought it from the bakery on Morrison Avenue, because she didn't know how to make one. I liked her for that honesty. I thought it meant something about her character. I should tell you something else. About 6 months after Cecilia passed, my son sat across from me at this very kitchen table and asked me how I was doing financially. He said it carefully, the way careful people say things when they've thought about how to say them. He said he just wanted to make sure everything was in order, that Mom had handled so many of the day-to-day things, and he didn't want me to be overwhelmed. I told him I was fine. The house was paid off. My pension from the county covered what I needed. I had savings and a retirement account that Cecilia and I had been building since our 30s. I told him all of it because he was my son, and I didn't think twice about it. I think about it now. The gift came in late October. My birthday is October 14th, and my daughter-in-law told my son she had found something she thought I'd really love, something practical, something that would help me feel more connected to them even when I was alone in the house. She brought it herself, which I noticed though I didn't say anything. My son was at work. She came in, had coffee with me, set the box on the table like it was ordinary. It was a tablet, one of those large screen ones marketed toward older adults. Easy to read, she said. We can video call whenever you want. I can check on you without you having to feel like I'm calling to check on you. She laughed when she said that. I laughed too. She spent 2 hours setting it up, created accounts, linked it to the household Wi-Fi, showed me how to use the video call feature, the photo sharing, the messaging. She was patient, warm. She showed me 3 times how to increase the font size. Before she left, she said she'd set herself up as an administrator on the account so she could help troubleshoot if anything went wrong. I said, "Thank you." I walked her to the door. I stood on the porch and watched her pull out of the driveway. That evening I sat in the living room and video called my son from the new tablet. He answered right away, grinning. He said it looked good on me, having new technology. I felt for a moment cared for. I want to say that plainly. I am not a man who asks for much, and something about that evening felt like being seen. I should have held that feeling up to the light a little longer and looked at what was casting it. The person who noticed was a man named Otis. Otis and I go back to 1987, when we were both working on the Millbrook Avenue overpass project, and the site foreman made a miscalculation on the load-bearing specs that would have eventually brought the whole eastern section down. Otis caught it. He was a civil engineer, meticulous in the way quiet people often are. He's retired now and lives 20 minutes from me in a house that looks modest from the outside and is absolutely immaculate on the inside. He keeps bees. He makes his own hot sauce. He has 3 degrees and speaks about himself like he has none of them. We have dinner every other Thursday. I was showing him the tablet in November. He'd asked to see it, the way Otis asks to see things, which means he was already thinking something he hadn't said yet. He turned it over. He looked at the back panel. He asked me who had set up the account. I told him my daughter-in-law had. He asked me if she was still listed as an administrator. I said yes, that was the arrangement so she could help if something went wrong technically. He nodded slowly. Set the tablet down on the table like he was returning something borrowed. He said, "Walter, on this kind of account, administrator access isn't just technical support." I said, "What does it mean?" He picked it back up, went through a few screens, showed me something in the account settings I had never looked at. He pointed to a section I hadn't been shown during the setup. He said, "This is location sharing. It's been on since she set it up. Continuous, not check-in location, all the time location." He scrolled further. "This," he said, pointing to another settings, "is microphone access for the voice assistant feature, which is also on." He paused. "Walter, these 2 things together mean that someone with administrator access knows where this tablet is at all times and can, depending on how the voice feature is configured, receive audio from this room." I sat back in my chair. He said, "I'm not saying that's what's happening. I'm saying that's what's possible with what she set up." I asked him how he knew all of this. He looked at me like the answer was obvious. He spent 12 years consulting on infrastructure security before he retired. Knowing how systems can fail or be used is what he does. I drove home that night on autopilot. I know the roads so well I don't have to think about them. And that night I was glad, because thinking was already fully occupied. I set the tablet on the kitchen counter when I got inside and looked at it for a long time. The screen had gone dark. The little indicator light on the front edge glowed soft orange. I hadn't known what that light meant before. Otis had told me. It meant the microphone was active. I did not turn it off. I moved it to the front hallway instead, near the door, and I told myself I was just rearranging. That was the first night I didn't sleep well in a month. 2 days later, I went into my home office to find the charging cable I kept in the desk drawer. The one for my old phone, which I still used because I liked the size of it. The desk is a roll top I bought at an estate sale in 1998. Cecilia called it the most expensive free thing I'd ever acquired because of the refinishing costs. I opened the bottom left drawer for the cable. The cable was there. So was something else. A manila folder. I keep very little in that drawer. An old user manual for a thermostat I replaced 6 years ago. A takeout menu I kept meaning to throw away. Some rubber bands that had fused together from the heat. And now this folder, which was not mine, which had not been there the last time I'd opened that drawer. And I could tell you exactly when that was. Because it was the week after Cecilia's funeral when I was looking for a pen to sign paperwork. I want to tell you what it's like to stand in a room in your own house, holding something that does not belong to you, in a drawer that only you use, in a house where no one has a key except your son and his wife. I want to tell you what that moment is, but I'm not sure language has a word for it. It's not quite fear. It's not quite anger. It's closer to the feeling you get when you're on a roof and you realize the footing is wrong. Something in your body knows before your mind catches up. The folder had my name on the tab in handwriting I recognized. My daughter-in-law's handwriting. Tall, looping letters, the kind of cursive that looks deliberately pretty. I took it to the kitchen table. I sat down, I opened it. There were printed documents. Legal templates, the kind you can find and fill out online if you know what you're looking for. The language was formal and dense and familiar to me in the specific way that things become familiar when you have spent time near lawyers after losing a spouse. I had signed things like this before. I knew what this category of paperwork meant. The first document was a durable power of attorney template. My name was in the field marked principal. The field marked agent was blank, but it had been handwritten over in pencil, very lightly, my son's name, like a draft, like they hadn't decided whether to use pen yet. The second was a petition for guardianship and conservatorship. This one had more filled in. My address, my date of birth, a list of assets that was more complete than anything I had shared with my son in that kitchen conversation. It included account numbers I had mentioned in passing and a property assessment that reflected a number I had not authorized anyone to look up. Behind the legal documents were several pages of handwritten notes. My daughter-in-law's handwriting again, in a smaller, tighter script. I will not read you every line, but I will tell you what they were. They were observations, dated observations, going back to April, 6 months earlier. Short entries, clinical in tone. April 17. W mentioned Cecilia in present tense twice during dinner. Seemed unaware. May 3. W could not locate his reading glasses. Found them in the refrigerator. He laughed it off, but we both noticed. June 11. W called our son by his childhood nickname unprompted. He caught himself but seemed embarrassed. July 29. W, confused about property tax due date. Thought he'd paid online but hadn't. Son covered the late fee. I put the pages down on the table. I sat there for a long time, the reading glasses in the refrigerator that had happened. I had laughed about it. It was the kind of thing Cecilia would have teased me about for a week and then forgotten. The property tax, that had happened too, not because I was confused, but because I had switched to a new online banking portal that month, and the interface was different, and I had thought I submitted and hadn't. I had called the county myself and cleared it up. The late fee was $12. These were not signs of a man losing his mind. They were the ordinary stumbles of a 67-year-old man living alone in a house that used to hold two people, navigating systems that kept changing on him, grieving in the particular way that grief manifests when you've been with someone so long that half your memory of your own life has their voice attached to it. And someone had been collecting these moments, writing them down, dating them, building something out of them. I said out loud, to the empty kitchen, to Cecilia's kitchen, I see what this is. Then I closed the folder, put it back exactly where I found it, went to the sink and ran cold water over my wrists for a minute. Old habit from hot summers working outdoors. It slows the heart rate. It works. Then I called Otis. He came over that evening. I showed him the tablet settings again first, because I wanted him to confirm what he'd told me, wanted to hear it again with everything I now knew. He confirmed it. Then I showed him the folder. He went through it page by page. He's a slow reader, Otis, the kind of reader who reads a thing and means it. When he finished, he closed it. He looked at me over the top of his glasses. He said, "How long has your daughter-in-law had a key to this house?" I said, "Since the wedding." 9 years. He said, "Your son, does he know about this folder?" I said I didn't know. I said that was the part I couldn't figure out. I couldn't tell from the handwriting, from the tone of the notes, whether this was both of them or one of them using the other. Otis was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "It doesn't matter yet. What matters is what you do next, and what you do next is not call either of them." He was right. I knew he was right. But I want you to understand how hard that is. My son, 38 years of knowing someone, teaching him to ride a bike on the driveway that's right outside this window, watching him figure out how to be a man after he made mistakes I didn't help him avoid. You don't just set that down. But I set it down because Cecilia would have. She was always better than me at doing the hard right thing instead of the easy wrong one. I thought about her more in those 2 weeks than I had in months, and not the confused way the notes in that folder described. I thought about her the way you think about someone who taught you something essential about yourself. The next morning, I called my attorney. His name is Ezra. He's been handling my paperwork since we bought this house, since Cecilia's estate, since every significant document in my adult life. I've never needed him urgently before. I told him I did now. He saw me the same day. I brought the folder. I brought photos Otis had taken of the tablet settings, printed out at Otis's kitchen table on his color printer the night before. Ezra read everything. He's in his early 60s, Ezra, the kind of attorney who got into law because he actually cares about the outcome, which you can tell because he gets quietly angry about injustice in a way that has nothing performative about it. When he finished reading, he set his glasses on the desk and pressed his fingers together. He said, "This is an elder financial abuse pattern. I've seen versions of it 3 times in 12 years. The surveillance, the documentation of cognitive decline, real or constructed, the conservatorship prep, it's a playbook." He said those words to me quietly. A playbook, something with a name, something that happened to other people before it happened to me. He told me what to do. It was the same general structure as things I'd heard before, in different contexts. Don't move anything, don't change anything, don't confront anyone. Document everything, keep your own record. He said one more thing. The tablet needs to stay in your home and stay on. If you shut it off or return it, you lose the evidence of how it was configured. So I went home, and I started the hardest 2 weeks of my adult life. I performed, that's the only word for it. I knew the tablet was active in the hallway, so I gave it something to hear. I said out loud, standing near it, that I'd been forgetting things lately. I said I had called the pharmacy about a prescription and gotten confused about which medication they were asking about. I said once, very quietly, like I was talking to myself, that I missed having someone to help me keep track of things. Each time I said something like that, I went directly to my truck and drove to Otis's house and wrote down the time, the words, and what I had actually been doing that day, which was none of those things. Otis kept a copy. I kept a copy in a different location. Ezra had told me, paper with dates, multiple copies, multiple locations. The responses came in the way I expected them to. My daughter-in-law started calling more often, just to check in. My son came by on a Saturday without telling me he was coming, brought food, helped me with a loose gutter I hadn't mentioned to anyone. He was attentive in a way that felt like monitoring dressed as care. At one point, while we were standing in the backyard, he said, very casually, "Dad, you know if things ever got to be too much around the house, we'd want to help, right? Whatever you needed." I said I knew that. I let a silence sit between us. I let it be a little longer than it needed to be, and I could see him reading something into it. 3 weeks after I found the folder, my son called and asked if I'd be willing to sit down together, the three of us, to talk about some things. He said my daughter-in-law had a few ideas she wanted to share. He said it was just to talk, nothing formal. I said, of course. I suggested Ezra's office because I had some estate papers I'd been meaning to update and thought we could knock out 2 things at once. There was a pause on the phone, just long enough to mean something. Then he said, "Sure, that sounded fine. I want to tell you about walking into that conference room." Ezra had positioned it well. He'd framed it in the invitation as a routine estate review with family members present. My son and daughter-in-law arrived together. She had a folder under her arm, a different one than what I'd found. This one newer, cleaner. She was dressed carefully. He was dressed like someone who expected to be somewhere important. They both hugged me when they came in. I let them. Ezra opened with formalities. He went through some actual updates to my estate documents, things we had quietly prepared, and that were now sitting signed in front of me, things that protected what Cecilia and I had built in ways that would be very difficult to undo. He let my son and daughter-in-law watch that happen first. Then he placed a document on the table. He said, "We've had a device audit conducted on the tablet that was given to Walter in October." He named the consultant, a licensed IT forensic specialist he worked with through his firm. The device was configured with continuous location tracking and persistent microphone access through the voice assistant function. The account administrator at the time of configuration, and still at present, is, he looked at my daughter-in-law, you. She started to say something. Ezra placed a second document on the table, the printed report from the forensic consultant. Then he placed a third thing on the table, a photocopy of the folder from my desk drawer, her handwriting on the tab, the guardianship templates, the dated observations, the property assessment number that matched my actual appraised value to the dollar. My son looked at the photocopies. He looked at them the way I've seen people look at accident scenes, that particular combination of recognition and refusal. He said, "I didn't know about that folder." My daughter-in-law said his name, just his name, the way you say someone's name when you need them to stop talking. Ezra said, "We also have email correspondence." He'd gotten this from his own channels, from the forensic work. An email thread between my daughter-in-law and an elder law attorney's office in another county, inquiring about the conservatorship process, asking specifically about the timeline from initial filing to appointment of a conservator, and asking whether a property could be sold or refinanced during that interim period. The room held that. My son put both of his hands flat on the table. He said, "I need to talk to my wife privately." Ezra said, "Of course. There are a few other things I want to make sure are on the record first." She sat very still. Her folder was still on the table in front of her. She hadn't opened it. Ezra said, "The observations documented in the folder, the reading glasses, the tax payment, the use of a childhood name have been catalogued and will be responded to individually with documented evidence of Walter's actual cognitive status, including a formal assessment completed last week by his physician." I had done that, driven to my doctor on a Tuesday morning and asked her to run the full cognitive screening. She had done it with the kind of professional calm that told me she'd had this request before. I had scored in the high normal range for my age group. She had signed the report. Ezra had the original. My daughter-in-law's composure had been holding. It held through the device report. It held through the photocopied folder. When Ezra read the line from the email about the property sale during the conservatorship interim period, it didn't break exactly, but it changed. Something in her face that had been arranged into a particular expression became something else, something more honest and less comfortable. She said, "I was trying to plan for what was going to happen anyway. He's alone. He's getting older. Someone has to be thinking about these things." I looked at her when she said that. I said, "I've been thinking about these things since before you were born." She didn't answer. My son left with her. He didn't look at me when they walked out, and I understood that. I understand it still. He is a man who has to decide what he knew, and when he knew it, and what it makes him that he was married to someone doing this while calling it love. That is not a quick decision. I don't imagine it's a comfortable place to live right now. I stayed in Ezra's conference room for a while after they left. He asked me how I was. I said I was fine, which was true and not true at the same time in the way that most honest answers are. He walked me through the next steps. The report filed with Adult Protective Services, which documented the elder financial abuse attempt, the communication he would send to my daughter-in-law's attorney regarding the device configuration, the formal letter placing my estate structure in a configuration that would require multiple parties to alter. I drove home on a clear afternoon. November in this city has a particular quality of light. Lower, quieter, the shadows come early. I pulled into my driveway and sat with the engine off for a minute, looking at the house. The deck I had built out back, the kitchen window, where Cecilia used to stand when she was thinking about something. The front hallway where a tablet with a glowing orange light had been sitting for 4 months. I went inside and unplugged it. Set it on the kitchen table. I'll give it back or I won't. Ezra will tell me what makes sense. But that orange light was done for the night. My son called 8 days later. He didn't call to explain, and he didn't call to defend what had happened. He called because he is my son, and because whatever she had asked of him, and whatever he had or hadn't known, he knows who he is underneath it. We didn't say much. We said enough. These things take time that you can't schedule, and there's no document that speeds it up. Otis came for dinner that week. We ate at the kitchen table, which I had started doing again. Setting two places sometimes without thinking about it, then looking at the second plate and deciding to leave it. Some habits of 30 years don't go quietly, and I've stopped asking them to. He said to me, "You know what I keep thinking about?" I said, "Tell me." He said, "She spent months watching you for signs that you were losing your grip on things. And the whole time you had more of a grip on things than she gave you credit for." I thought about that. He's right. But I want to be honest with you about something else. Something I haven't said yet. Being right doesn't make it clean. Knowing the truth doesn't repair what using the truth cost. I spent 2 months performing confusion, performing fragility, performing the early stages of a decline I wasn't experiencing. And there is something that stays with you after that. When you have pretended, even strategically, even necessarily, to be less than you are, you notice the pretending for a long time after you stop. I took the tablet back to the store. I explained to the young man at the returns counter that it hadn't worked out the way I hoped. He asked if there was a technical problem. I said yes, there was a problem with how it had been set up. He gave me a full refund without asking anything else. I have a landline now. I had one before Cecilia died, disconnected it because she was the one who used it. I had it reconnected. I call my son on it sometimes. He answers. These are not long calls yet, but they are honest ones, which is the only kind I've ever known how to make. I want to tell you what I learned, not as a lesson, because I am tired of the word lesson, and I don't think that's what this was. I think it was a warning, the kind your body gives you before you reach for something hot. Not loud, not theatrical, just a signal that something is wrong that requires your full attention right now. At 67, I thought I knew the texture of danger. I thought it looked like the things it had always looked like: structural failures, overextended load, bad joints under pressure. I did not expect it to look like a birthday gift. I did not expect it to come with 2 hours of patient setup and a warm goodbye on my porch. What I know now is this: the people who want access to what you have spent your life building will often come through the people you trust most. They will use your grief, they will use your love, they will document your ordinary humanness and call it evidence. They will configure access into devices before they hand them to you and call it convenience. If someone you love gives you a device and insists on being the administrator, ask what that means before you say thank you. If someone in your life is paying attention to your lapses with a kind of careful attention that feels different from love, trust that feeling. Get a second opinion. Get an attorney. Get someone technical who can look at what's really running on your devices and tell you what it's actually doing. Your name, your home, your accounts, your right to make decisions about your own life. These things are not burdens that other people need to manage for you. They are yours. You earned them over decades of work and ordinary life and loss and getting back up. Do not hand them over because someone is worried about you. Real worry doesn't need your passwords. Real love doesn't need administrator access. Real care doesn't keep notes. If something in this story felt familiar, I hope you'll talk to someone about it. Not keep it, not explain it away. These things don't survive the light, but they do survive silence. Every single time. Thank you for being here. Stay careful, stay grounded, and look after yourselves out there.